Chapter 9. Colours. It was Thursday, third period, and for the first time in a long while Faddy felt a sense of eager anticipation buzz through his body. As soon as the bell rang, he left Mr. Torres's World History and Civilizations class and wove his way through the crowds to reach the large studio at the back of the school. He paused at the doorway. A smell of paint and plaster and glue permeated the air. Bright paintings and drawings decorated the walls, and clay sculptures stood along the back of the room. Art supplies sat in organised piles on tall shelves. Paint, coloured pencils, construction paper, glue, and a myriad of other things that he didn't recognise, but couldn't wait to inspect. Taking a deep sniff, Faddy entered, strolling past the tables placed in a circle in the centre of the room. His fingers trailed along the paint-spattered surfaces as he looked for a spot that suited him. As he chose a seat facing the front, he noticed a familiar face at the door. The girl tossed her black hair over her shoulder and gave him a wave. It was Anne from the cafeteria. Faddy responded with a tentative nod and looked away. She's just being nice because I returned her wallet. He sat down and turned his attention to a collection of black and white photographs tacked onto a corkboard. Cool. A tall black woman in a shimmering silver top stepped out from one of the supply closets. "Attention, class," she called out. She strode to the middle of the room and motioned for everyone to take a seat. Her bracelets jingled as the kids stopped chit-chatting and took their seats. She looks familiar, thought Faddy. The memory of where he'd seen her was there on the tip of his mind, but someone sat down next to him and interrupted his train of thought. It was Anne. She pulled out a pad of paper and pencil. "Hey Faddy, how are you doing?" Faddy blinked in surprise. Good. Do you like art?" Before Faddy could answer, she continued, "This is a really fun class. I always choose it as my elective." "Quiet down, class," ordered the teacher. "Most of you have taken art with me for the last few years, but for new students, my name is Miss Bethuna. Welcome all of you. I hope you had a great summer. This year we're going to focus on colour and contrast, and our first project is going to be done in a group, so I need you all to get into groups of 3s. Faddy's stomach sank. As kids called out to their friends, breaking out into the groups, he was going to be left out. He didn't know anyone. "So, do you want to be in my group?" asked Anne. Faddy blinked. "Really? You want me?" "Yeah," said Anne. "Always like working with different people. Makes things more interesting." As the groups finished assembling, one last boy stood standing. Faddy recognised him from his maths class and felt sorry for him. His light brown hair stood in a halo on top of his head, while large glasses magnified his watery blue eyes, making him look like a confused owl chick. "Let's ask him," said Faddy. "Yeah, sure," said Anne, waving at the boy to join them. The boy pointed at himself and mouthed, "Who? Me?" Faddy nodded. With a wide, relieved smile, the boy hurried over to their table and introduced himself as Jonathan Greenlee, John for short. The 3 of them huddled together as Miss Bethuna gave instructions on what to do, then left them alone to brainstorm. "Look, I don't know much about art," said John. He pushed his glasses up his nose. "Everything I draw looks like a stick figure." "Well, we need to come up with a theme," said Anne. She pulled a large yellow notepad from her bag. Faddy and John nodded in agreement. "How about the forest?" said Anne. "Oh," said John, scratching a red rash on his arm. "I got poison ivy while camping last week." "That looks painful," said Faddy. "Does it hurt?" "Nah, just itches," said John, giving his arm another good scratch. Anne frowned as another thought distilled in her mind. "How about the sky?" John looked unconvinced. "How about something from the movies or books?" she said, hoping inspiration would strike. John perked up. "Movies, huh?" "Well, yeah," said Arn. Classics like Gone with the Wind or Casablanca. John wrinkled up his nose. Aren't those in black and white? I don't watch those. Faddy hadn't heard of either one but kept his mouth shut. What do you watch? Asked Arn. Well, I like scary movies, like Friday the 13th or anything with Arnold Schwarzenegger in it, like The Terminator or Predator. Arn rolled her eyes and wrote scary movies on her pad of paper. The sea, said Faddy under his breath. The what? Said John. The sea, like in the book 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Oh yeah, said John. I've seen that movie. It's also a book, said Arn with a grin. And that's a totally cool idea. We could do colours of the ocean and all the different creatures that live there. Faddy smiled as Arn's pen flew across the lined page. As the class wrapped up, Miss Bethuna held up her hand for people to quiet down. Class, just one announcement before the bell. Photo Club will be holding its first official meeting on Tuesday here in the art studio. You need to have access to a 35mm SLR camera. If you're interested, the sign-up sheet is on my desk. I'm holding an informal meeting to discuss plans for this year's club after school today. Faddy's heart raced. A photo club. But Miss Bethuna's next sentence hit him like a bucket of cold water. The fee for supplies and use of the darkroom is $50, which can be paid in cash or your parents can write me a check. There was no way he could come up with that much money. Are you going to join? Asked Arn. John shook his head while Faddy shrugged without commitment. You should. I was in it last year. It's a lot of fun. We have a few great photographers come in for special lessons and we go all over the city for photo shoots, said Arn. At the end of class, Faddy passed by Miss Bethuna's desk. Great theme, Faddy, she said. The sea is going to give a lot of scope to be very creative. Thanks, said Faddy, eyeing the photo club sign-up sheet. Do you want to join? Faddy paused, conflicting desires racing through him. You seem to know what to do with a camera, she said, causing Faddy to look at her in surprise. It was you at Lake Elizabeth, right? Asked Miss Bethuna, giving him a closer look. Then Faddy remembered the woman in the cool red tennis shoes. It had been Miss Bethuna. I like taking pictures, he said lamely. Well, sign up then, she urged with a smile. Faddy grabbed the pen and wrote down his name, and with a heavy heart he exited the studio. Walking home from school, Faddy passed at McDonald's where Noor worked. He'd never had the nerve to go to see her, but today, for some reason, maybe because he didn't want to go back to an empty apartment, he went inside. The pungent smell of hot oil hit him as he stepped near the counter. She wasn't at the register. He peered down behind the milkshake machine, down the narrow gallery. She wasn't at her post at the French Fryer either. She probably left. He exited the store and circled around the back, taking a shortcut to get back to the apartment complex. As he rounded the corner, the sound of muffled laughter filtered out from near the dumpsters. Standing in the shadows were two McDonald's employees. Faddy froze in surprise. Through the gloom he could see that one of them was Noor. She leaned next to a tall, gangly boy with tattoos, drinking a soda while he showed her something in a magazine. See, told you I was right, he said with a wink. Man, I can't believe I lost our bet, grumbled Noor with a giggle. The boy raised his hand and Noor's palm smacked against it in a high five. The sharp sound rang through the back alley and Faddy inched back. Noor grabbed the magazine and turned. Her eyes widened as she caught Faddy standing at the corner and she started to cough. What's wrong? Asked the boy, pounding her back. Faddy hitched up his backpack and ran. The honey tin thudded against his back, but he didn't stop till he opened the door to his apartment. He staggered inside and collapsed on the fraying couch. Noor's going to think I'm spying on her. She's going to pound me for sure. That night, Faddy and Noor avoided making eye contact as the family sat down for dinner. "Here, Faddy, take the yogurt," said his mother, passing him the bowl. "Thanks," murmured Faddy. Zafuna's eyes were dull and deep shadows lay along her cheekbones. He knew she wasn't sleeping well ever since they'd heard from Professor Sahib, but at least she was coughing less. The doctors had diagnosed her with a serious chest infection, but the good news had been that it had cleared up with a series of powerful medications. Unfortunately, the pills left her sleepy and groggy most of the time. Faddy took a spoonful of tangy homemade yogurt and plopped it on his plate next to a pile of stewed cauliflower. He hated cauliflower, but he knew they'd be eating a lot of it this week. It had been on sale at the Save Mart and his father had bought 3 heads. "So, Faddy," asked Habib, "anything interesting happen at school today?" Faddy shook his head, an image flickering in his brain like a hazy still from a reel of film. It was Noor laughing intimately with a tattooed boy in a narrow alley behind the McDonald's. "Come on," wheedled his father with a smile. "There must be something." "Well," said Faddy, trying to erase the image and come up with something interesting to report. "There is a photo club starting next week," he mumbled in a rush. "A photo club? That sounds wonderful," said Habib with a twinkle in his eye. "That's a good one," he thought with relief. "Boy, we used to have fun with that old camera in Kabul," added Habib. Faddy nodded. "The fee is $50 to join." Habib's smile faltered. $50? Interrupted Zafuna with a frown. "That's too much." "Well, maybe," said Habib, but Faddy interrupted him. No, it's okay," said Faddy in a rush, wishing he'd never brought up the subject. "I'm really not that interested. It's just that, well, there's just a club for photography, that's all." Zafuna's mouth tightened and she glanced at Noor. "Why did you waste money getting another pair of earrings?" Faddy glanced at his sister's earlobes. She was wearing shiny new hoop earrings. "They weren't very expensive," said Noor, her voice low. She brushed her hair forward, hiding her ears. Her fingernails were painted black. "Jean," said Habib, "Noor works very hard. What's a little jewellery for our pretty daughter?" Zafuna's lips quivered and she remained silent. Faddy looked around the table at his family and guilt spread like acid through his gut. They all blamed themselves for Mariam's loss. They would hate him if they learned the truth. Later that night, as the rest of the family retreated to their rooms, Faddy sat in the darkened living room, staring at a square of light glowing from the tiny television. His father had bought it at the garage sale and the remote control was missing, so he had to lean over to change the channel. None of the shows looked interesting and he was about to switch it off when a story on the 10 o'clock news caught his eye. A little girl travelling to New York from Chicago had gotten on the wrong flight and ended up in Miami. As Faddy watched her happy reunion back with her parents in Chicago, he wished Mariam were on a plane coming home right now.